Right then, Manchester United are back in action tomorrow, and it's actually a really, really, really important game. West Ham sit 4th in the Premier League. We can't allow them to take any more points away from us. We can't allow them to extend their lead over us. We need to close that gap because 3rd and 4th is the absolute most Manchester United can do this season because of the way it's gone. And 3rd and 4th has to be the ultimate target that we have to go and attain. And it starts with giving West Ham a bit of a schooling at home. They're just coming off a 3-2 loss to a struggling Leeds side. Bielsa doing a bit of a madness in that game, making weird early doors substitutions, but it paid off for him, so who knows. We did beat them away 2-1 in the reverse fixture earlier in the season. But how do they play? We're going to talk about it, aren't we? So they currently play a 4-2-3-1, fundamentally under Moyes. West Ham are a counter-attacking side. It suits what they've got. I think it suits David Moyes, really. And the team setup has been players that defend deep and narrow. Their discipline, their bravery, that helps them win the ball back through interceptions, setting traps, and they only really press you once you enter that mid-block. For those that have watched United for a long time, think back to when United played Juventus and Inter Milan and teams like that in the Champions League in the 90s. You would be 2 banks of 4, and they would maybe only sort of try and engage once you start crossing the halfway line. Yeah, that, essentially. But that's where Souček and Rice excel. They are physically imposing as a midfield pivot. They're capable of imposing themselves on football matches. Souček is sneaky dangerous when he creeps forward and makes third man runs into the box. When he's given the license to do that, he can be hard to track and can be very effective when he arrives in the box. And he's got a tendency to do that Scholes-esque late arrival, and being very good in the air. He can be a bit of a threat in the box at set pieces. Possession is usually quickly recycled by the central midfielders towards the wings because that's where they like to attack. They're going to utilise Kufal and Cresswell, look to use the pace of those two players, look to get crossing launched into the box because that's how they like to attack towards a striker, or potentially pull it back to the edge of the box as well, which is a much better, more high percentage option, but they do favour the old school style of get your head on that sort of number 9 sort of attackers. The fullbacks love to provide the width because the wingers within the system like to go narrow and play in the inside and in the infield, and they get in and around the striker where they look to support him. And when a ball comes up for a big striker, for a big hold-up man, you must be familiar with the phrase, striker looks isolated. There's no one for him to play it off, to do a quick give and go and spin off somewhere. When you narrow in your wingers, this gives you the opportunity to do that. It gives you the opportunity for the striker to pull somebody out of position. Let's say I'm Varane, right? And say someone like Antonio comes up against me. Antonio is going to feel Varane up behind him, and maybe he's going to just creep 1 or 2 yards closer to his own goal, which he's going to do what? Well, Varane either leaves him and sits off and gets back into his space, allowing Antonio to pull the ball down, probably unchallenged if we've managed to get the right sort of distance in between the defence and midfield. He's going to want to maybe tease the defence, be almost like away from the midfield. So, yeah, you guys don't engage me. Let the defence engage me and then peel off again and find himself in space. Now, the options that you've got as a defence is you either leave that and allow him to turn, which depending on where you want them to start shooting from and how good the player is, that can be effective. Or you want to get right up, touch tight to him, and you want to try and disrupt him as he's turning, prevent him turning, hope he plays it back so you can reset your position. The difficulty you've got is, if he brings it down, he doesn't necessarily need to turn if he's got wingers that are narrow to him, because he can just lay it off to the left, lay it off to the right, and if you've been dragged out of position, now there's a big old gap behind you. And that is what I think David Moyes tries to utilise Antonio for. Not necessarily just like hanging it up at the back post so you can go bosh and get your head onto it, but also play direct up to him, and can he drag players out of position while we look for a third man run to be able to open up the centre of the defence. And for me, United can be susceptible to that, particularly if it's going to be Lindelof. And I'm going to go with Lindelof because I thought he did well against Brentford, and I think that there's a lot of reasons why you would want to use Lindelof. So that's how I think it's probably going to go, and you'll get what happens then. All those 4 attackers are going to be in and around your defence, in and around the edge of the box. All 4 are a goal threat. Lanzini and Fornals, they're interchangeable in their starting positions. They'll rotate between like left midfield, number 10. And they'll cause you lots and lots of problems, make it difficult to track what they're about. Team news-wise, West Ham have got Kurt Zuma working towards this fixture as a return, but it's been 6 weeks on the sideline, so he's probably only going to make the bench for them. But they should welcome back Souček from COVID, and he will be a massive boost after Rice has kind of been struggling a little bit on his own, particularly against Leeds in the last game. My predicted 11 is as follows: Fabianski, Koufal, Dawson, Diop, Cresswell, Souček, Rice, Bowen, Lanzini, Fornals, Antonio up front. Starman, I think it's Bowen, Arguably the most informed player in the Premier League at the moment. 9 goals, 10 assists so far this season is, quite frankly, ridiculous. He's a bit of a fire starter when it comes to West Ham's counter-attacking style, with his pace, his dribbling ability, and the speed of the attack that he provides them. It gives you a great deal of balance, which is really important for them. He's got a belter of a left foot, and he's equally effective working inside or going around the outside. If Tellez gets the start, this will be a real test for him to see how he manages someone with that level of ability directly in front of him. Stats-wise, West Ham are 48.1% possession, which is the 11th best in the Premier Division, which shows you that they can hold possession, but it's not their favourite thing. They like to go direct, they like to play on the counter, and they love the transitional side of the game. They've scored 41 goals in the league, which is the 4th best, which is where they are in the league, so that's bang on track, I imagine. They've registered 579 touches in the opposition penalty area, and only City, Chelsea and Liverpool have registered more, which makes them 4th in the league again for that, so right on track when it comes to the attack. They've got 321 crosses this season, which is the 3rd most, and they're not afraid to go direct and play the channels either, because they've only attempted 3 fewer passes above shoulder height than Burnley this season. So they're a real conundrum, I think, West Ham. They're going to test you in ways that teams at this sort of end of the table generally don't, and they're going to do it to a level that the likes of Burnley typically don't as well. So it's a very 1980s, 1990s British style of play, Brexit if you like, but there is a little bit of flair in there as well, which you have to deal with, and there's genuine quality in there as well, which is what makes them a threat and why they sit 4th in the table. So how do we beat them then? Well, I'm going with a very similar 11 to what we saw against Brentford, because even though Brentford play a totally different formation, I actually think the characteristics of the Brentford attack are very similar to what we're going to see against West Ham, although Brentford pressed a hell of a lot more than West Ham will. So I think some of the issues that United found against Brentford won't be present against West Ham. I think West Ham can actually play into our hands a little bit, providing Antonio doesn't isolate and bully Victor Lindelof, because that's the one worry I do have in this formation. I'm not saying it's perfect. I just think that when Maguire came on, he just looked awful, and I can't justify starting him on the back of that, even with the perceived weakness of Victor Lindelof up against someone like Antonio. So, starting 11, David De Gea, obviously is in great form at the moment. Dalot and Tellez keep their place. I think their ball-playing abilities is a very big positive for us. Varane and Lindelof as a centre-half partnership. McTominay, Fred and Bruno as a midfield 3 to hopefully overload Souček and Rice. Bruno being in a lot more of a withdrawn role than we've seen from him recently. And I am making a change up front. And it ain't Alanga. Alanga starts because he deserves to start. Ronaldo starts because it's Ronaldo. But it will be Sancho, I think, coming in instead of Greenwood. Not necessarily because Greenwood's done anything wrong. I just think he's going to want to try and play Sancho for what he could offer us in this particular game, which I think is a little bit more discipline than you get out of Greenwood in terms of holding his position. Could be wrong. It could be Greenwood again. It might even be Rashford. It could even be somebody else like Jesse Lingard or someone like that. But I think it could go with Sancho. And here's how you beat them using that. So you got to be wide attack. And that's why I've used Sancho. Delivery is going to be absolutely vital. West Ham are going to be very, very narrow, and their fullback and the wingers tuck right in, and they deter teams from playing through them. That's why I dropped Mason Greenwood. Mason Greenwood narrows in, and he doesn't hold width. You want to have a team that's going to start stretching the opposition and forcing you out of the positions that you want to be in to go and deal with them. Rice and Souček work as a protective barrier in front of the back 4. And because of the narrowness, they've been prone to overload, being overloaded in the sides, and they've conceded goals from crosses. So That's why Delo and Tellez get the nod, but also someone like Sancho and Alanga, because I think they'll hold their position. Also, if it was Rashford, you can understand it. I don't think it should be, but I think you can understand it if he played off the left, because he does hold his position nice and wide. And if you went with Sancho and Rashford to hold their position and try to draw out West Ham's fullbacks, especially with the overlapping Delo or Tellez either side of them, that would make a lot of tactical sense for us to try and do, especially if you've got Ronaldo in the middle. It also wouldn't be mental for United to switch to the diamond and try and throw Cavani in the mixer as well. But I think that the one thing that we've lacked thus far, that I started to see little bits of against Brentford, is this keyword control. There was a lot more controlled possession from United, even though it wasn't perfect, a lot more against a real pressing side in Brentford. And I think trying to read between the lines of what Ralph Rangnick's saying, I think he still wants a lot more control in games. And I think you get more control if you go with a midfield three in this instance. We have to be secure down our right-hand side because West Ham are extremely dangerous. Benrahma, usually, but because of AFCON, it's probably going to be Lanzini. And Lanzini, Fornals, Cresswell are absolutely lethal down their left-hand side. That's an area of the pitch that they create most of their chances from. Lanzini and Fornals are interchangeable, which makes it very difficult to know who's marking who. You've got to have a lot of communication. You've got to stay switched on for 90 minutes because if you miss, and two of you end up marking one guy, someone's free, and they will find him. Cresswell joins the attack and links in the build-up with both of them, and he acts as a bit of a wide overlapping outlet, and sometimes even just as a bounce option. He gets in good positions, and he's got real good end product and delivery, which could really hurt us. You've got to be mindful of that. Delo's got to bring his A-game. Don't want Varane getting dragged out to have to go and double up and support out there. And that's another reason why I go with Sancho over Greenwood on the right wing, because I think Sancho will do a little bit more dog work than Greenwood would. Other hand, what you could do is you could keep running at Cresswell, pin him back, and take a little bit more out of West Ham's attack. And the only issue is that, on the other side, you've got Bowen and Kufel, which are still a massive, massive threat for United. So this should be a pretty good end-to-end game, I imagine. You move the ball fast, you switch the play, you drag Souček and Rice out of position, trying to track someone like Bruno a little bit deeper than he has been. I think he makes it easier for you when he stands right off next to Ronaldo. You start pulling him off to the left a little bit where he occupied against Brentford. You put him into that kind of channel. One of them's going to want to go towards him, and that's when you're looking for an underlapping run, maybe someone else bombing on from the centre of midfield, and I think you're going to be in a little bit of luck there. Souček's prone to being someone that can get overzealous. I would have Bruno trying to wind him up and trying to get a kick out of him because sometimes he can get a little bit giddy, sometimes he can go in a little bit hard, and I think sometimes you can exploit the space that he leaves in behind him. Basics of football. You pass, you make a move. You can overcome these. You can just play it around them. You can definitely play around these two in midfield. They don't leave a lot of space behind them, so you're probably looking that you're either going to be attacking quickly through the wing areas and trying to get across onto Ronaldo. I don't think you're going to see much runs in behind of them because they don't play a very high line. But it should be a very good game. You got to get crosses into the box because that's where they've been vulnerable this season. And I've seen someone like Ronaldo on the end of them. Well, you couldn't really ask for anybody better on the end of them, could you? So that's what I'm thinking. Let me know what you're thinking. And also, make sure to go and check out Pouch. The link for that is in the description. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, five-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.